A lot going on with Fed Chair Jerome Powell. He's expected to speak tomorrow, while multiple Fed presidents signaled that rate hikes are here to stay. That really upset the markets yesterday. Joining me now, University of Maryland economist Peter Marisi and Kingsview Asset Management CIO and Fox News contributor Scott Martin. Scott, I'll start with you and all that Fed speak that we got yesterday. John Williams, James Bullard saying that the Fed needs to be more aggressive. We'll see what Jerome Powell has to say, but are you ready for a half a point for December? Or are you thinking maybe it's going to be 3/4 of a point?
Well, these days, I guess we have to be ready for anything, so that's how I'd answer that question, Cheryl. I think the market's getting ready for that, too. I think the problem is, what is the right thing here? And what is the Fed really trying to do? Whether it's your point, it's the Fed governors, or it's actual Chairman Powell here, because, my goodness, of late, it feels like the Fed is almost being run by Sam Bankman here, because there's no accountability. There seems to be no traction and really no visibility on what's happening here to the economy, to the housing market, to the consumer, or to interest rates themselves in the open market. So, Cheryl, I think that the key takeaway, though, is the market is starting to realize the Fed is closer to the end of this than the beginning. And so whether it is December, it is January, or some point in Q1 of 2023, once the Fed does that pivot or does stop and let the economy breathe a bit on its own, that's when we get back to this more normal growth environment, normal interest rate environment, and frankly, a more normal inflationary environment.
You know, Peter, that is the biggest question right now, and the biggest concern is the U.S. economy. Consumers are dealing with high inflation, 2/3 of the economy, consumer spending. But as we talk about the more rate hikes, we talk about higher energy prices, double-digit jumps in many cases for Americans. All of this seems to me to say that 2023 is going to be a rough year. What do you project here, Peter?
Oh, I think we're going to have very slow growth next year. We may have a recession or at least a pause in the economy, and the growth will be less than 1%. Inflation won't get down below 4 because of some of the things you mentioned. Interest rates have little to do with oil prices, and we have climate change in addition to the war in Ukraine that is affecting the availability of basic agricultural commodities. So I doubt that the Fed will be able to lower interest rates next year. I think it's going to find inflation to be particularly intractable. And the real question here is, how high do they leave it at? Is the peak going to be 5.5% and they leave them there for a while? Because the chairman was basically saying, we're going to take it up to a certain level and it's going to sit there. By the way, I think the economy can function at 5.5% interest rates if inflation is 4%. It can't if it's 2%. So, you know, I'm not particularly scared of all this, but I think a pause in growth is necessary to bring inflation under some kind of control.
Okay, that makes sense. You know, and you were talking about, Scott, real estate. We got home price data today. Case Schiller, prices down third straight month. That was for September. And but still, I thought this was interesting, Scott, still up 10.4% annually. The reason I ask you that is because you're still seeing a year-on-year annual growth rate for home prices. That seems to me that there's another leg to fall there, Scott.
Totally, yeah. For now, that's just more that's erosion that's going to come, Cheryl, because of the interest rate policy, and probably, frankly, needed to happen because of supply concerns anyway, which were pushing up price, and just the free money that was out there. But a couple weird things, though, for me with respect to the Fed and just where they are, where they were, and where they should be. I mean, to Peter's point, we've already had that slowdown. We've already had the pause in the economy. We already know that that's happened. We already pulled back, what, $50 in crude prices? I mean, these are already starting to turn over. The inflation indicators are starting to wane. So for my money, the Fed needs to take a step back before they do too much damage. And you guys, we saw a recession in 2022. It was the first quarter and Q2, and it was mild. Do you want to see a bigger one? The Fed can keep going on this rate hiking progress, because that will certainly deliver one, because not only do we have demand getting destructed now, we still have supply chain concerns out there around the world, which the Fed, to Peter's point, is not going to fix, but they aren't helping them by raising interest rates on businesses that are trying to produce more stuff.
Peter, react to that.
Well, I think we need to be cautious about celebrating lower gas prices. Please remember that Joe Biden is draining the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. He initiated that basically as an election year ploy. More than 40% of it's gone. He's got to stop doing that. Simply, he's going to run out of oil, or there's not going to at least not be enough left to deal with a real supply disruption. When he stops doing that, and once the dust settles on what the Europeans are going to do about a cap price with regard to Russian oil, I suspect it won't have much meaning. Then we'll see what the price of oil is. But I wouldn't assume that gas prices are going to stay where they are. We have refinery shortages in terms of capacity, and the federal government's been dumping oil in the market. That's going to stop quite soon.
Peter, I think you're right. I think that's a very good point. We're going to leave it there, gentlemen.
Venezuela, anybody?
Yeah.
See you, Cheryl.
Peter's got to go today. All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it.